Hello and welcome back to another lecture portion. This is actually part 5, and I want to kind of go through some investing and financing activities. We saw previously how to put together the cash flow from operating activities section of the statement of cash flow. The next two pieces are going to be the investing activity section and then the financing activities section. So we notice here that by analyzing the accounts, right, of land, of long-term assets, the long-term debt, the equity accounts, we're able to infer certain things. Right now, in the homework problems, we're going to tell you, hey, we bought land by issuing bonds, right? However, in the real world, when you get out there, there might not be someone that says, hey, we did this, right? You kind of got to know how to find that information. So here we see an example of a company that purchased land for $110,000, and they did this by issuing bonds, right? Now, first off, this is definitely a significant non-cash investing and financing activities, right? How do we know that? Well, our land increased by $110,000. We issued bonds to do that, right? So any information that we need can be found within the accounting records. But the main takeaway here really is the fact that this is something that's significant that doesn't impact cash. So we need to disclose this in a schedule or in the notes to the financial statement. Okay. So here is the remainder of the investing and financing activities sections of the statement of cash flow. Right? So notice here in the example, we start off with, hey, here's the net cash that's provided by operating activities, and then we flow right into, no pun intended, we move into cash flow from investing activities. Did we buy land? Yep, we bought a building, $120,000. Did we purchase equipment? Yup, $25,000. Oh, we sold some equipment, $4,000. Okay. So then we calculate the net cash that is used by investing activities, and we see that out of all the cash, the cash flow that we had, $141,000 of that went towards investing activities of buying PP&E, right? Then we go down, then notice the next section, right? Cash flow from financing activities. Did we issue common stock? Yup, sure did. $20,000 worth of it. Okay. Did we pay any dividends? Yep, sure did. $29,000. Now, what we're not seeing here is the debt, right? The long-term debt. If we issued long-term debt, we would add that. If we retired some long-term debt, we would see that here as well, okay? Now, here's the important thing, right? Look here. We have the net increase in cash, okay? Basically what we did was, and we got $22,000, okay? How did we get that number? Well, How did we get that number? Well, we took the $172,000. Oh, good Lord. Sorry. We took the $172,000, subtracted out the $141,000, subtracted out the $9,000, okay? So that net cash, or that net increase in cash, is $22,000, right? Remember I said we don't put cash in the operating section, right? We said we don't list the cash increased by $6,000 in the last example, right? Why don't we see that increase in cash in the operating section? Because we see it down here. Remember I said we are proving the cash balance, okay? So we take our net increase in cash. To that, we add the cash at the beginning of the period, which is $33,000. Our cash at the end of the period is $55,000. I guarantee you, if you go to the comparative balance sheet, guess what their ending cash value is? $55,000. Here we see an example of the disclosure note right here, or the schedule, right? Issuance of bonds to purchase land, $110,000. That's important information, right? Because in the future, guess what we're going to have to do? Pay interest on that bond. We're going to have to pay the principal on that bond back at some point in time in the future. There's going to be future cash flows based on a transaction that happened in this period. Okay? We wouldn't know that had we not put that note there. Okay? And then they just go through and go through each of the the investing and financing activities. But right here is really the key, right? This is where we have the entire statement of cash flow. But notice this example, and this is really important, right? So that additional information, right? Well, we purchased equipment for $25,000 and we sold equipment for $4,000, right? That equipment cost us $8,000. Okay, no problem. Well, we have cash flow from that. We have equipment we got to get off the books. We have a loss on disposal. We need to show each of those within the cash flow statement. How do you do that? It's pretty easy, right? We already explained it before, but here's a nice visual on exactly what we do, right? So think about it. Originally, we bought equipment for $25,000, okay? Cool. That's going to show up in the investing section of the statement of cash flow. But then we sold equipment, right? We sold equipment for $4,000, but it originally cost us $8,000, okay? So we got to get the equipment off the books. We got to get the cash. We got to calculate our disposal. The key takeaway here is, where do all these things go, right? Well, remember, we said that whenever we do the operating activity section, we have to add back any losses or any gain, or add back any gains. Wait, scratch that. We need to add back losses, subtract any gains, right? What are these losses and gains on? Well, they're from disposal of assets, okay? So notice what we have here. We have the sale of equipment for $4,000, right? That's under the investing activities. We have the loss on disposal of equipment for $3,000. And then we bought another piece of equipment on top of selling this. We see that here too under the investing activities of purchase of equipment. Okay? Again, the key here when we're doing this is we're really trying to compare the net change in the cash that's on the cash flow statement with the cash account, or the changes in the cash account, right? So here, remember when I said at the end of the day everything has to balance, meaning we got to prove that balance, right? Look at the ending balance of cash, $55,000. Okay, it increased by $22,000. If we go back and look at our income statement, look, what is the net increase in cash? $22,000. That's the change that we had right here. Well, what did this change come from? Right? Yeah, it changed by $22,000, but where did that come from? Well, we got $172,000 in coming in from. We got $72,000 net cash provided by operating activities. We had $141,000 net cash used by investing activities, and we had net cash used by financing activities of $9,000. Okay, that explains the $22,000 net increase in cash. Okay, another thing that's really important, and you'll kind of get into this in some of your finance classes and higher level accounting courses. We need to look at free cash flow, right? What is free cash flow? Free cash flow is the cash remaining from operations after we adjust for capital expenditures as well as dividends. Okay, how do we calculate that? Super easy. Put it on a note card, memorize it. Okay, free cash flow is equal to the net cash that's provided by operating activities minus capital expenditures minus cash dividends. Okay, so if we look at our statement of cash flow, right, we can calculate what Microsoft's free cash flow is. First thing we do is we say, okay, here's the cash that's provided by activities or operating activities, $21,863, right? Then we look at the expenditures on property, plant, and equipment, right? We end up with $4,257. That's probably in millions, I would guess, right? How do we know that? Well, because we came up here and we said, additions to property and plant, right? $4,000. Okay. Then we look at the dividends paid. Well, what are the dividends paid? Well, we see that they paid $7,455, probably million. Yeah, it's in millions, right? So we see that their free cash flow is $10,151. Okay. Do not worry about the direct method. You'll hit this in higher level accounting classes. For those of you that aren't accounting majors, you're free. Don't even worry about it. Okay? So don't worry about that. Don't worry about the direct method. And then as far as the worksheet goes, you really don't need to worry about that. We kind of showed how the worksheet, I kind of showed you an abbreviated worksheet of that, or of abbreviated worksheet of how to do the operating section or operating activity section of the statement of cash flow. Okay. When we come back, we'll do some demo problems. So please tune back in for that one.